introduce you to our audience. You are a Finnish professional soccer player from Mjällby, AIF in Sweden, currently playing. I hope I got that right. And
yeah, that's good enough.
You made your national team debut for the Finnish national team earlier this year against Wales, keeping a clean sheet and saving a penalty in the whole process. You're also a plant-based athlete and founded a company. So I'm excited to be talking about your career and all of those aspects of your life. Welcome to the SPRTER Podcast. Also want to mention Carljohan's experience store that's exclusively available on the SPRTER app, where you can request a wide range of experiences with him, such as personal advice, a virtual meet and greet, a chance to watch a game with him, and many more. So make sure to check that out. So let's get into some of those questions, and I'd like you to take me back to where it started. How did you decide to play soccer, or should we call it football?
Both work for me. I'm not that tight on either football or soccer. I prefer football myself, but I understand that Americans tend to see football as something completely different. So doesn't really matter to me. But for the question, I started playing when I was probably like 4 years old. We had a summer camp somewhere near my hometown, and my mother signed me up with one of my friends, and we went there and kind of started from there, like the usual way. Started playing with my friends, found a team close by, and then took that route. And when I was 12 years old, I got moved up to the or what you'd call it, the representative team or something like that, where the one that actually competes and so on. And then I took that route all the way to the senior team, and that's really where it all started. And I don't really remember when it became like serious for me, but it was always like, since I was 12, 13, 14, it was kind of the thing that I wanted to do the most, and the thing that I was the most passionate about, and it's always been that way.
And you just mentioned something that I think that passion goes a long way, but you just mentioned that you don't know when was that tipping point in terms of, hey, I could really make a career out of that. Was it just a natural progression then, in a way, or is there that one? You said you don't remember that exact point, but there's always that first time you realize, hey, I could have a career in this.
Yeah, it was probably when I was around 15, 16, something like that, like about to start high school, when I first started training with the senior team. And I was quite young at the time for a goalkeeper to be training with the senior team. Like there were a few others ahead of me that were older, still in the academy, but they were training that much with the senior team, and they started calling me up for practices every now and then. And that's when I kind of realized that, okay, I'm actually doing quite well. And then when I got moved up full time, and then it was like right, okay, so the next step is probably going to be to sign a contract with the senior team, and that sounded like fun. So that's probably like the tipping point for me, that this actually might realize and become a reality for me.
Okay, that's great. As in, when like, oh well, there's a whole bunch of guys ahead of me, as in they're older, but I'm actually training, I'm actually getting playtime. So that's exciting too. That feeling is pretty exciting. Now, you just mentioned, as in, you're a goalkeeper. Obviously, in Germany, there's a saying that goalkeepers, they have to be a little bit crazy, just because, I mean, it's one-on-one against a striker. You're getting balls hit at you at 100 miles an hour, maybe 80 miles an hour. So why goalie, and what's that passion?
That's a good question. I don't know. I was always naturally drawn to being a goalkeeper, even though I liked playing out on the field as well. But I played as a goalie both in football and in ice hockey, so maybe there was just something about it that I liked. And yeah, as you said, I never felt uncomfortable like being in front of the shots and everything like that. And now when people like put it in their perspective, it's almost like they're frightened and like they really dislike the feeling of having to try to get in the way of the ball. And I completely understand that. It makes no sense when you kind of put it down in words. Like if my job description would be like trying to stop flying hard balls, it would not make any sense basically. But I don't know. The passion is kind of the thing that you're kind of a lone wolf out on the pitch. Like the other team, their kits are the same, and you kind of stand out with your equipment and the gloves and the ability to actually play the ball with your hands and being a bit different. And your only or your main job is actually to ruin the game for everyone else. So maybe there's something about that as well.
Do you have that little spite in you when there's a striker and you're like, yeah, I saved that one. You're not scoring today, buddy. Is there some, I mean, even some rivalry within the league where you're like, I don't care if someone else scores, but this guy's not gonna score. Is that the case sometimes?
Well, maybe sometimes when I was younger, it was definitely the case every now and then, especially when meeting certain teams. But I don't know, like my personal feeling is that the rivalry thing between players isn't maybe as big in Scandinavia or the Nordics as in the States, or that's the picture I've gotten. But there are certain moments here when you're kind of having one of those days and you know just everything is going to work your way. So then if you make a big save or something, you might give a little smirk or something like that just to let them know that you're you're on it today. But it's quite rare. I usually just like concentrate on what I'm doing because it's actually it's such a small portion of the game that you can actually affect. Like I can't affect where the striker is going to shoot and how good his shot is going to be. So I'm just trying to like do my job and take it from there. But yeah, every now and then when you pull off a wonderful save, then you get that feeling inside, and it's a pretty good feeling.
Okay. So if you could save one penalty of any player in the world right now, who would it be and why?
Oh, I'd probably have to go with Cristiano Ronaldo. Uh, just because of who he is. He's been my favorite outfield player since I was a little kid. So that would kind of be the dream for me. But I'd rather it be a national team game then because I'm a Manchester United supporter as well. So I wouldn't want to ruin their game.
Fair enough. And you just talked about the national team game. Talk me through that first national team game um, earlier against Wales. What was that experience like? And then saving the penalty there. Obviously, that's a big moment for any goalkeeper. But then in your first game on the at the national team, I mean, that's a very special moment. Can you talk me through that?
Yeah, well, yeah, as you said, it's a very special moment. It was quite unbelievable. The feeling was, yeah, almost indescribable. It was, I got the heads up a couple of days before the game, so I kind of had some time to prepare, which was actually pretty nice because there were more thoughts and probably a bit more nerves than there usually are before games. Even though it was friendly and I knew it was kind of limited how much audience there would be at the game, but it was still at my hometown and in the neighborhood where I grew up. The stadium is really close to where all my junior games and practices used to be, so it was nice to be in that environment and make the debut there. But the game itself was pretty straightforward, to be honest. I mean, apart from the penalty, it was kind of a nice game to have as a first debut because the tempo wasn't too like it wasn't all over the place. It was pretty controlled for both sides. Many players who got their debuts for us, and we tried out a couple of things. So it was a quite comfortable game in a way to make the debut. And yeah, but it didn't take anything away from the feeling or the pride that I felt after the game and even before. And during the national anthem, it was quite unreal for me, to be honest.
And that's I can only imagine in terms of that representing your nation and you're playing abroad, right? You're
Yeah.
playing right now. You're playing in Sweden, and then being back in Finland in front of your as you said, in front of your home crowd and where you grew up, that must be a very, very special moment. And that's exciting. And hopefully you get a lot more time with the Finnish national team. Now, you mentioned early on your favorite player growing up was Ronaldo. I don't blame you for that. I think he's an awesome player. But as a goalkeeper, who were your goalkeeper role models when you grew up? It's like, oh, I really like this person, this style, or obviously a striker wouldn't be a role model for a goalkeeper, or is he?
No, I mean, yeah, to take example with Ronaldo, his work ethic and the way he's kept care of his body and the way he looks after himself. But Iker Casillas was definitely my biggest idol growing up, and he was till the day that he retired. He was my biggest goalkeeping idol. Then on the later stages, Manuel Neuer has been a big inspiration for me as well. The Finnish national team goalkeepers were always keepers who I looked up to. Even those guys who are now in front of me in the national team, they've always been exemplary for me. But yeah, that's pretty much those guys who I've looked up to.
When we're looking for our audience, we often get some questions before. So we have a segment that's called Pro Advice. Where we ask our audience to submit some questions before the show, and we'll ask you your advice to those questions. So the first question is, I want to play my sport professionally one day. What should I do to put myself in the best position to achieve that dream? That's very broad, I know, but from your experience, what are some of the three recommendations?
I mean, probably the biggest thing for me is to kind of just trust the process and realize everything what it involves, kind of all the, I don't want to say sacrifices because that's kind of a stupid word, because it's a decision you take to strive for becoming a professional, and kind of the realizing what it takes and putting the work in. And I'm just not talking about training hours. I'm talking about nutrition, sleep, recovery, all this stuff. There are many professionals who are really pedantic about studying tactics as well. So that's one way to go. But just realizing everything, understanding every small part of the concept of becoming a pro athlete and becoming the best athlete possible, and maybe just developing some part of your game above everything else that makes you stand out. And I know these are basically just tips for becoming as good as athlete as you can get, but the fact is that usually professional athletes are the best ones out there. When it comes to becoming a professional for a team, there's always kind of a system where agents or people like that can help you out, and there's also important to remember that you need to find the right people around you, the people who actually sincerely want to help you and just don't see you as merchandise. Because
there's a lot of
I mean that there's having people around that you can trust is probably one of those things that I find really important as well.
And that's great. I think you touched on a few aspects here in terms of just that professional mindset when it comes to nutrition, the sacrifices, and there's a lot of sacrifices that professional athletes make at a very early age, and treating your body and also treating your mind right, and preparing, as you said, with tactics, etc. So those aspects, as well as surrounding yourself with, call it, the right people that have your best interest in mind. So I want to dig deeper on one of those aspects is nutrition. You are a plant-based athlete. And what does that mean to you? Why is that the case? And how does it feel?
Well, I mean, it started probably a couple of years ago. I started cutting down meat from my diet just because, just because when I moved to Sweden, I noticed that meat is actually pretty expensive here, and most of the chicken you can get in the stores is frozen. So I was too lazy to get it out in time and then prepare the meal. So I just started finding substitutes for chicken and meats, and that's actually how I started to explore vegetarian dishes more and more. And then I started just reading different studies on vegetarian and vegan diets for athletes, and most of the results were pretty positive. There were obviously some things you've got to keep in mind, like where do you get your protein and how to get all the amino acids and stuff like that, and just to make sure your diet is nutritious in every way possible. And that's just with a bit of research. It was actually pretty easy to get everything together when I tried it out, and I found that it worked quite well. I didn't feel as tired after practice. It felt like I recovered a bit quicker, and then all the ethical questions involved weren't like the big thing for me, but they absolutely like tipped the scales a bit. Like I felt that, well, if I can decrease my carbon footprint with this and have a bit of a better conscience regarding animal treatment in the food process and the food industry, then that's also a plus sign. But it was definitely first and foremost because I felt that it had a good effect on me as an athlete. So that was my like real reason behind it all.
And it's great to hear that you were able to adjust so easily, so to speak. Some people really struggle with that transitioning as well. And I think, as you said, there, like some of the ethical as well as the environmental aspects, they do play a role. But as an athlete, you got to make sure to treat your body right firstly to be able to play at the peak level. And it's great to see that you're able to do that with that plant-based diet. So that's really exciting to hear. And obviously, as an athlete, as a younger athlete, learning more about the nutritional aspects is certainly something that they can look out to for some of those who've gone through that, particularly if someone's like performing at that highest level, right? You're at the Finnish national team. It doesn't really get higher than that, than the national team level, and you're performing like that. So it's clearly there are some positive effects of that, so which is great to see. Now, part of that is also you're still part of a team, and oftentimes at teams we see that there is team lunch afterwards, after training. We see all of those different team travels when you're on the road. How are the teams adapting to some of these special nutritional requests? Because oftentimes what we see with the soccer team or football team, you have, all right, it's pasta and cheese and some meat for lunch, or for the recovery, and what you mentioned with the protein. As in, is that easy? Are they adjusting, and how's that process?
I'd say they're adjusting quite well. I mean, it's obviously a learning curve for the people cooking the food for us as well. But I get an individual lunch every day after the practice. So I guess it's nothing more special than them making a separate plate for me, and that's it. And all the away trips, we usually sleep at hotels and stuff like that. So they're usually pretty prepared to make a vegetarian or a vegan dish every now and then. I'm guessing they have them on the menus as well. So I don't think it's that big of a deal for them. And on the national team trips, there's always also vegan options available for everyone. So that's probably the best place to be for it, because there are so many different carbohydrates that they offer. There's always pasta rice or potatoes or sweet potato and different vegetables, and then there's like the main dish as well, which can be anything. It can be a stew or like a chili sin carne kind of mix with beans and stuff like that. So it's pretty easy for me even when traveling with the team, because they're really looking after the players nowadays, and then that's nice, and it's improving a lot.
Okay, that's great to hear. Now, as someone who oftentimes you still need to prepare your own lunch every now, for some of these deals, for these games, etc. And you still need to plan ahead quite a bit. Now that planning ahead, it's also a bit of a mindset in that you got to be prepared and you got to be organized, and I think that mindset is also helping you out a lot in your founding a goalkeeper glove company. Can you tell us a little bit more
Yeah.
about your company, what it takes to found a company and still play professional? How do you find time for that? Walk us through that.
Yeah, well, it all started like, what was it, 4 years ago probably, when I first moved to Sweden. Our goalkeeper coach had a friend who was like involved in like goalkeeper gloves, who had like tried it out a bit for himself, and it all started with the idea that gloves are pretty expensive, to be honest. Like the top tier gloves are around €100 probably a pair, and given that they don't last that long, like let's say 3 months in daily use and they're completely gone, and those gloves you wear for matches, they wear out even faster. So we kind of all had the same agreements on the idea that the gloves are too expensive when compared to the cost of producing and how long you can use them actually. So we kind of had the thought of trying to design a glove of our own and just kind of take it from there. We knew that we didn't have the biggest financial backing or anything like that, so we started it out pretty small scale. We founded the company in December 2018, I think, and just designed 4 different gloves. Went through the whole process of choosing latexes and designs and backhand materials and everything like that. And then we obviously had all the things that are included in the founding process, like applying for certain what are they called, I just serial numbers for the company and stuff like that, so we'd be a legitimate business. And then we founded our website. We got some help. We're 5 guys in the business, and one of their dads works for a marketing company, so we got a bit of a help from them for the website and everything like this, the Google SEOs, and what kind of information we need on the website to actually generate traffic, and social medias, and what actually matters in marketing, and what's the buzzword we should use, and what keywords are important for us, and everything like that. So it was a big learning curve, and it still is. We're lacking behind with social media marketing quite hard right now. So we're actually relying quite a lot on word of mouth right now. But that's we don't see that as a bad thing, because we all have other jobs as well. So right now our customer base is pretty much completely in Sweden, and we can't produce that many gloves so that we could actually try to make it that much bigger right now. But the target is to expand a bit and find ourselves into Finland and Denmark and Norway probably as well. So that's basically like how it all started, and I've been using our gloves obviously for the past years, and I can't really say a negative thing about them, because I've designed a couple of them myself, so I can't really badmouth them.
And I'm sure they're good quality. Obviously, if the Finnish national goalkeeper is wearing them, then that must mean something. Now, you have a personal brand, right? You're an athlete, you play for a top tier team. And how are you using that personal brand to promote your own products, and how's that beneficial in that marketing process?
Well, it obviously is beneficial, because we kind of get a professional athlete promoting the business for free, so to say. And we're actually two guys who play professionally. I'm playing in Allsvenskan, and one of the other co-founders is playing in the league below us. So that's actually quite nice for us to have two guys promoting our gloves for free. But I kind of try to not like boost it too much, because I get the feeling like that people realize that most people who follow me and all my friends realize that it's my own company and stuff like that, and there are quite a few goalkeepers following me, so I don't want to send like a mixed signal that I'm just promoting this because it's my own stuff. I'd rather just post like game pictures and training pictures where I actually wear them and use them and kind of show the product off, instead of just posting pictures of the gloves lying on the table or on the floor or anything like that. So that part of marketing and incorporating it with my personal brand is something that I haven't really thought that much about. We're trying to do that on the company profile instead. But yeah, I've got like a rule of thumb for me as well, that even if it's like a brand ambassador deal or something like that, if it doesn't feel right to me, or if it doesn't look like me, I try not to post it, because that's not something I'd like to have on my feed either.
And I must say that is the, call it, authentic way of promoting your product anyway. So I think that's the right way to go about it, and showing, hey, here I'm wearing these gloves on a daily basis, and rather than, yeah, buy these gloves, you get a 5% discount, etc. So I think that's a really good way of actually using your personal brand and building your company around that. So it's awesome to see athletes as entrepreneurs and starting their companies and really being entrepreneurial, because oftentimes we see the transition of an athlete. It's like, well, I've played professionally for 15 years. What do I do now? And someone like you will be like, I've been a professional athlete and a professional entrepreneur, and that will be a very easy transition down the road. But obviously, before that transition happens, you have a lot of career goals on the field. Actually, one of our comments earlier read Saku to the Premier League. So obviously, you're in Sweden right now. You're playing for a great team, I'm sure. But what are some of your career goals that you have lined up for the next year, next 2 years? So thinking short term, what are some of the next steps in your career? And it doesn't need to be another team. It can also be in Sweden.
No, no, like the short-term goals are probably something like we're actually going to sit down now in December and talk with my coach about the stuff, that what we want to improve both physically and mentally and technically on the pitch, and kind of take it from there. There are a couple of things that I already kind of have my eyes on that I want to improve, but in terms of finding or having a good environment to improve is probably the key factor for me, and getting a lot of game time and just trying to improve as an athlete as much as I can and as a goalkeeper. And obviously, long term, I still got the big dreams that I had as a kid. They're still there, and I'm still striving after them. So that's kind of the motivation for me, and I kind of refuse to close the lid on those dreams, because that's what's been pushing me so far, and that's what kind of pushed me through the more difficult patch a couple of years ago, when I didn't get to play that much, and it was starting to look like that. Okay, I might be a decent football player, but never really make it as a top professional. But now I kind of feel like I'm on the right path, and I want to stay on that path as long as I can. So that's kind of what I'm pushing for, and that's definitely also the short-term target, to just try and continue this improvement that has happened the last 2 years, probably, and just take it from there and see what the future brings.
I love that approach, and saying I want to make sure that I'm improving, and the focus is on my performance rather than I want to be at that team in this year or in this league. So I really love that approach. But obviously, as a Man United fan, At some point they'll need to go another goalkeeper down the road. So we'll be on the lookout. I think what you just mentioned here is really important. Is the game time that we see a lot of young athletes sometimes sacrificing, or they want to move to what's considered a bigger club, and they sacrifice the game time and they sacrifice their long-term approach. So I love that you focus on that. I want to improve and I want to be in that role. Now we're pushing up to half an hour and we want to keep it within time limit, although I have so many more questions. This was an awesome interview and great insights. Thank you so much for joining us here. So I also want to make sure that we mention your experience store. So anyone who is interested to learn more, get some personal advice and meet and greets, etc., all of those aspects, make sure to check out Saku or Carljohan's experience store on the SPRTER app. Head over there, check it out, and also connect with him on Instagram, all of the socials. And we're excited to follow along with your career, see where it takes next, and wish you all the best in also your entrepreneurial endeavors. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been really fun.
And thanks for the great insights. I honestly think there's so much to unpack here from whether it's entrepreneurship, it's personal branding, all of those career advice, and even the nutritional advice. Honestly, I say vegetarian. I sometimes say vegan, but then there is pizza and I get weak. So I think from that nutritional advice, that's also something I think it's really exciting. More athletes becoming really plant-based, and I think it's exciting to see that because it's always been that misconception in the industry about that. Oh, protein. Where do you get your protein? It's like there's so much. There's so many options. So it's awesome to see all of those insights. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Oh,